The dust devil swirled across the desert floor like a wandering spirit, and Julianna Baker stood at its center, watching her Apache mother's people disappear into the Crimson Canyon without a backward glance. It was 1873 in the Arizona Territory, and the summer heat pressed down like a physical weight. Julianna was 20 years old, but she felt ancient as she watched the last figure vanish into the rocks. Her mother had died 3 winters ago, and without her presence to bridge 2 worlds, Julianna had become a problem neither side wanted to solve. Too white for the Apache, too Apache for the whites. She existed in a space between worlds that no one else seemed willing to occupy. The bundle at her feet contained everything she owned. A beaded dress her mother had made, a worn blanket, a water skin, and a small knife. Her father, whoever he had been, had left her mother before Julianna drew her first breath. A trader passing through, her mother had said once. A man with yellow hair and gray eyes. Julianna had inherited those eyes, and they had marked her as different from the moment she opened them. The elders had debated for 2 days. She had sat outside the council circle, hearing the rise and fall of voices. Some had argued for keeping her. Others said she brought bad luck, that the soldiers would use her as an excuse to attack. In the end, they left her with enough water to reach the nearest white settlement, and a blessing she did not feel. Julianna picked up her bundle and began walking south. She knew there was a town about a day's journey away, though she had never been there. Her mother had spoken of it sometimes. A mining town called Apache, though that was in Nevada, several days north. This settlement was smaller, barely worthy of the name. It clung to existence near a spring, serving the occasional prospector and cattle drive passing through. The sun crawled across the sky as she walked. Her moccasins, worn thin, provided little protection from the sharp stones. By the time the sun reached its zenith, she had drained half her water. The landscape stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by saguaro cacti standing like silent witnesses to her solitude. As the afternoon wore on, she began to wonder if she had chosen the wrong direction. The land all looked the same, and though she had her mother's skill at reading the subtle signs of the desert, exhaustion was making her vision blur. She stopped to rest beneath a palavered tree, its green bark offering minimal shade. That was when she heard the horse. Julianna scrambled to her feet, her hand instinctively moving to her knife. A rider was approaching from the west, moving at an easy pace. As he drew closer, she could see he was a white man, tall in the saddle, wearing the practical clothes of someone who worked cattle for a living. A cowboy, her mother would have called him. He reined in his horse about 20 feet away, his posture relaxed but alert. He was young, perhaps 25, with sun-darkened skin and light brown hair that curled at his collar. His eyes, a startling blue, took in her appearance with a single sweeping glance. "You look like you are heading somewhere specific," he said. His voice was steady, neither hostile nor overly friendly. "Mind if I ask where?" Julianna straightened her spine, refusing to show weakness. "The settlement near Coyote Spring. That is where I am headed to." He shifted in his saddle. "Name is Samuel Porter. Most people call me Sam." She hesitated. Giving her name felt like offering a piece of herself she could not afford to lose, but refusing seemed childish. "Julianna Baker." His eyebrows rose slightly at the English surname, but he did not comment. "You walking the whole way? Unless you see another horse around here that I have missed." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, but it was not unkind. "Fair point. But it is still another few hours on foot, and the sun is not getting any cooler. My horse can carry 2 if you are willing." Everything in Julianna's experience warned against accepting help from strangers, especially white men. But the alternative was arriving after dark, if she arrived at all. She studied Samuel Porter's face, looking for the signs her mother had taught her to recognize. Cruelty left marks, her mother always said. It showed in the eyes and the mouth. This man's eyes were clear and his mouth held no cruel twist. "I accept," she said finally. He dismounted in one fluid motion and offered his hand to help her up. His grip was firm and calloused, the hand of someone who worked hard for a living. She settled behind the saddle, her bundle clutched to her chest. The horse, a sturdy bay gelding, shifted under the additional weight but did not protest. They rode in silence for a while, the only sounds the rhythmic thud of hooves and the creak of leather. Julianna was acutely aware of Samuel's presence in front of her, the way his shoulders moved with the horse's gait. She had never been this close to a white man before, except for the occasional trader who had visited her mother's band, and those encounters had been brief and businesslike. "So what brings you to this corner of nowhere?" Samuel asked eventually. "If you do not mind me asking." "Looking for work," Julianna said, which was true enough. What kind of work? She had not thought that far ahead. "Whatever needs doing." He was quiet for a moment. "The settlement is not much more than a trading post and a few buildings. But Martha Ellis, who runs the post, she is always needing help. Might be she would have something for you. You know her, been through there a few times. I work for a ranch about 30 miles west of here. Sometimes we drive cattle through this area on the way to market." The conversation lapsed again, but it felt more comfortable now. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and orange. In the distance, Julianna could see a smudge of green that marked the presence of water. "That is the spring," Samuel said, following her gaze. "We will be there before full dark." As they drew closer, the settlement revealed itself in pieces. The trading post was the largest building, constructed of adobe with a wooden porch. A few smaller structures clustered nearby, including a stable, a blacksmith's forge, and what looked like a bunkhouse. Smoke rose from a chimney, carrying the smell of cooking food. Samuel guided his horse to the trading post and dismounted. He offered his hand again to help Julianna down. Her legs were stiff from the ride and she stumbled slightly. His hand steadied her elbow. "Thank you for the ride," she said. "No trouble." He hesitated, then added, "Good luck with Martha. Tell her Sam Porter sent you. That might help." Before she could respond, the door of the trading post swung open and a woman emerged. She was somewhere in her 50s, built solid and sturdy with iron gray hair pulled back in a bun. Her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, moved from Samuel to Julianna and back again. "Sam Porter," she said. "Did not expect to see you for another month. Just passing through, Martha. Brought someone who is looking for work. Thought you might be able to use the help." Martha's gaze fixed on Julianna and the scrutiny was intense. Julianna met it without flinching. She had learned long ago that showing fear was the surest way to be dismissed. "What is your name, girl?" "Julianna Baker." "Baker," Martha repeated. "And where did you come from, north of here?" "That tells me nothing." Martha crossed her arms. "I will ask plain. You got Apache blood." There was no point in lying. Her features made it obvious. "My mother was Apache, my father was white. And where are they now? Both dead." Martha's expression softened slightly. "So you got nowhere to go." It was not a question, but Julianna answered anyway. "No. Can you cook?" "Yes." "Clean?" "Yes." "Read and write?" Julianna hesitated. "Some. My father taught my mother before he left. She taught me." Martha glanced at Samuel, who had been standing quietly to the side. "What do you think, Sam?" He met Julianna's eyes. "I think she is someone who will work hard if given the chance. High praise from you." Martha was quiet for a moment, thinking. "All right, I will give you a trial. 1 week. You work hard and honest, you can stay. Room and board plus $1 a week. But if you steal or cause trouble, you are out. Understood? Understood. Good. Come inside and I will show you where you will be sleeping." She turned to Samuel. "You staying the night if you have a bed free. I can always find room for paying customers. Stable your horse and come inside." As Samuel led his horse away, Martha gestured for Julianna to follow her into the trading post. The interior was dim after the bright sunlight, but as her eyes adjusted, Julianna could see shelves lined with supplies: flour, beans, coffee, tobacco, and 100 other items. A long counter ran along one side, and a few rough tables and chairs occupied the center of the room. "This way," Martha said, leading her through a door at the back. They passed through a kitchen where a pot of stew bubbled over a fire, then down a narrow hallway. "That is my room," Martha said, pointing to a closed door. "This one here is yours." She opened the door to reveal a small room barely big enough for a narrow bed and a chest. A single window looked out toward the desert. It was sparse, but it was more than Julianna had expected. "Outhouse is behind the main building," Martha continued. "Water for washing is in the kitchen. I expect you up at dawn to help with breakfast. You will clean, cook, serve customers, and whatever else needs doing. Questions? No. Then put your things away and come help me serve supper. We have got Sam and 2 prospectors staying tonight." Julianna set her bundle on the bed and took a moment to look around her new home. It was strange to think she had woken up that morning as part of a tribe, even if an unwelcome part, and now she was here, about to begin a new life among strangers. She touched the beaded dress in her bundle, her last real connection to her mother, then closed the bag and returned to the kitchen. Martha put her to work immediately, showing her where things were kept and how she liked things done. By the time Samuel came in from the stable, Julianna was setting bowls of stew on the tables. 2 rough-looking men were already eating, focused on their food. Samuel took a seat at a separate table, nodding his thanks when she brought him his bowl. She was aware of him watching her as she moved around the room, but it did not feel invasive. It felt more like curiosity, the way someone might watch a wild animal that had wandered close to camp. When she brought him a cup of coffee, he said quietly, "Looks like you landed on your feet." "It is only for a week. You will do fine." There was something in his voice, a certainty that surprised her. "You do not know me. I know enough." He took a sip of coffee. "I know you did not complain once during that ride, even though you were clearly exhausted. I know you answered Martha's questions straight, even when lying might have been easier. That tells me something about your character." Julianna did not know what to say to that, so she retreated to the kitchen. Through the doorway, she could see him eating his stew, occasionally looking toward the kitchen as if hoping to catch another glimpse of her. Something warm stirred in her chest, unfamiliar and unsettling. She pushed the feeling away and focused on her work. The evening passed in a blur of activity. After supper, there were dishes to wash, tables to wipe, floors to sweep. By the time Martha finally told her she could rest, Julianna's feet ached and her arms trembled with fatigue. She stumbled to her small room and collapsed on the bed without bothering to undress. Sleep came quickly, but her dreams were troubled. She stood between 2 groups of people, one Apache, one white, and no matter which way she turned, they moved further away. She woke before dawn, her heart racing, and lay in the darkness listening to the settlement come to life around her. Martha was already in the kitchen when Julianna emerged. "Good, you are up. Start the fire and get water boiling for coffee. Then mix biscuit dough. There is a bag of flour in the pantry." The morning routine was established. By the time the sun rose, breakfast was ready. The 2 prospectors ate quickly and left. Samuel took his time, lingering over his coffee. When he finally rose to leave, he paused by the kitchen doorway. "I will be back this way in about a month," he said. "Hope things work out for you." "Thank you," Juliana said. "For everything." He nodded and was gone. She heard his horse's hooves fade into the distance and felt an unexpected pang of loss. He had been the first person in a long time to show her simple kindness without asking for anything in return. The days fell into a pattern. Wake before dawn, help Martha prepare meals, clean, serve customers, more cleaning, more cooking. It was hard work, but Juliana threw herself into it with determination. Martha was a demanding employer but fair. She corrected Juliana's mistakes without cruelty and occasionally offered a word of praise when something was done well. The customers who passed through the trading post were varied. Prospectors searching for silver or gold, cowboys driving cattle, occasional travelers heading east or west. Most ignored Juliana or treated her with indifference. A few made comments about her mixed heritage, but Martha shut that down quickly. "I do not allow that kind of talk in my establishment," she said firmly to one man who had made a crude remark. "You can apologize or you can leave." The man had apologized, grumbling. That night, as they were cleaning up after supper, Martha said, "Your week is up tomorrow." Juliana's heart sank. "Yes, you have worked hard, harder than the last 3 girls I hired." Martha wiped her hands on her apron. "The position is yours if you want it. Same terms." Relief flooded through her. "I want it, thank you. Do not thank me. You earned it." Martha's expression softened slightly. "I know what it is like to not fit in anywhere. I was married to a Mexican man for 15 years. When he died, his family wanted nothing to do with me, and my own people thought I had betrayed them by marrying outside my race. So I came here and built something that was just mine." It was the most personal thing Martha had ever said to her. "I am sorry about your husband. It was a long time ago, but I learned something from it. The people who matter will see you for who you are, not what blood runs in your veins." She hung up her apron. "Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be busy. There is a cattle drive coming through." Martha was right. The next day, a dozen cowboys arrived with a herd of cattle. They were resting near the spring before the next leg of their journey. The trading post was suddenly full of noise and activity. Men wanting hot food, cold beer, tobacco, new rope, and a dozen other things. Juliana moved through the chaos, taking orders, serving food, trying to keep track of everything. One of the cowboys, a heavy-set man with a scraggly beard, grabbed her wrist as she passed. "Hey, pretty thing, how much for some private time?" Juliana jerked her arm free. "I am not for sale." "Everything is for sale at the right price," he said, laughing. Before Juliana could respond, Martha appeared with a shotgun. She did not point it at anyone, just held it casually in her arms. She said, "No, Jake. That means no. Now eat your food and keep your hands to yourself." Jake raised his hands in mock surrender, still grinning, but he did not bother Juliana again. The cattle drive stayed 2 days. By the time they moved on, Juliana felt like she had lived a lifetime. But she had also earned several dollars in tips, which Martha let her keep. It was the first money she had ever had that was truly hers. 3 weeks passed. Juliana settled into her new life, learning the rhythms of the trading post. She discovered she enjoyed the work, especially cooking. Martha taught her new recipes and techniques, and Juliana shared some of her mother's recipes in return. The combination of Apache and white cooking traditions created meals that customers raved about. She thought about Samuel more than she wanted to admit. He had said he would return in about a month. As the 4th week approached its end, she found herself watching the Western Road whenever she had a free moment. On a Wednesday afternoon, she was hanging laundry behind the trading post when she heard a familiar voice. "Is that any way to greet a paying customer?" She turned to find Samuel leaning against the corner of the building, a smile on his face. Her heart did a strange flip in her chest. "You came back," she said, then felt foolish for stating the obvious. "Said I would." He pushed off from the wall and walked closer. "How have you been?" "Good. Martha gave me the permanent position. I am glad. You look like you have been eating better." It was true. Martha made sure her employees were well fed. Juliana had put on a few pounds, filling out the gaunt hollows that had marked her face. "You look the same." "Well, ranch work does not change much day to day." He watched her hang the last sheet. "I was hoping, if you get some free time, maybe you would let me buy you dinner." "I cook the dinners here." "Then maybe let me buy you a cup of coffee and some conversation." There was something nervous in his manner, as if he genuinely feared she might say no. Juliana found it endearing. "I get a break after the supper rush, around 8. I will be here." He was as good as his word. At 8 o'clock he was sitting at one of the tables, 2 cups of coffee already poured. Juliana slid into the seat across from him, suddenly feeling shy. "So," Samuel said, "tell me about your first month." She told him about the cattle drive, the various customers, the things Martha had taught her. He listened attentively, asking questions, laughing at the funny parts. In turn, he told her about life on the ranch, the cattle they were raising, his boss who was a hard man but fair. "How did you end up working as a cowboy?" she asked. "My parents died when I was 14. Cholera. I had no other family, so I started hiring out for whatever work I could find. Eventually, I learned I had a way with horses and cattle, been doing it ever since." He traced the rim of his cup with one finger. "It is not a bad life, but it is lonely sometimes." "I know about lonely," Juliana said softly. Their eyes met across the table and something passed between them. An understanding, a recognition of shared experience. Samuel reached across the table and gently took her hand. His palm was warm and rough against her skin. "I thought about you a lot this past month," he admitted. "I know we only met briefly, but there was something about you. The way you carried yourself with dignity even when everything had been taken from you. I could not stop thinking about it." Juliana's heart was hammering. "I thought about you too. I would like to get to know you better if you are willing. I come through this area about once a month. Maybe we could spend time together when I do. I would like that." His smile was like sunrise. They talked until Martha shooed them out so she could close up for the night. Samuel walked Juliana to the back door of the trading post, their hands still loosely clasped. "I will see you next month," he said. "I will be here." He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away, and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness toward the bunkhouse where he was staying. Juliana touched her forehead where his lips had been, feeling dazed and happy in a way she had never experienced before. The next month passed slowly. Juliana threw herself into her work, but Samuel was never far from her thoughts. She caught herself imagining conversations they might have, things she wanted to tell him, questions she wanted to ask. Martha noticed her distraction and gave her a knowing look, but said nothing. Samuel returned exactly 4 weeks later. This time his visit lasted 3 days, and they spent every free moment together. He taught her to ride his horse properly, sitting in the saddle instead of behind it. She taught him some Apache words. They talked about everything and nothing, building the foundation of something deeper. On his last evening, they walked out to the spring under a sky full of stars. The desert was quiet except for the distant cry of a coyote. "I have been thinking," Samuel said. "This coming and going once a month, it is not enough. I want to see you more." "I want that too, but I cannot leave here. Martha depends on me and I need the work." "I know. That is why I have been thinking of making a change." He turned to face her. "I have been saving money for years. I have enough to buy some land and start my own small ranch. There is a parcel about 10 miles from here that is for sale. If I bought it, I would be close enough to see you whenever you had free time." Juliana's breath caught. "That is a big decision to make for someone you have only known a few months." "I know. But Juliana, I have never felt this way about anyone before. When I am away from you, I count the days until I can come back. When I am with you, I feel like I have found something I did not know I was looking for." He took both her hands. "I am not asking you to marry me, not yet, but I am asking if you would be willing to let this grow into something more." She thought about what her mother had told her once. Love was not about finding someone who was the same as you. It was about finding someone who saw all the parts of you and loved them all. Samuel looked at her and saw not a half-breed, not someone caught between two worlds, but simply Juliana. Whole and worthy. "Yes," she said. "I want to see where this goes." He kissed her then, not on the forehead but on the lips. It was gentle and sweet, full of promise. When they broke apart, they were both smiling. The next few months were the happiest Juliana had ever known. Samuel bought the land and started building a small house and barn. On his regular visits to the trading post, he would tell her about his progress. How he had raised the walls, finished the roof, dug a well. He bought 3 head of cattle and a few chickens. It was humble, but it was his. Juliana continued working for Martha, but now her life had purpose beyond simple survival. She was saving her money too, thinking about the future. She and Samuel talked about marriage but wanted to wait until he had established his ranch and could provide properly. Not everyone was happy about their relationship. Some of the customers made comments about Samuel lowering himself by courting a half-breed. A few suggested that Juliana was using him for his money and would leave him once she got what she wanted. Samuel ignored them all, and Juliana learned to do the same. Martha was supportive. "You two are good for each other," she said one evening. "I have seen a lot of couples pass through here over the years. Most are just going through the motions. But you two, you look at each other like the other person hung the moon." It was true. Juliana felt like she had been living in shadows her whole life, and Samuel was sunlight. He made her laugh. He made her feel safe. He made her feel like she belonged somewhere, belonged to someone who would not leave her behind. A year after they first met, Samuel came to the trading post with a serious expression on his face. Juliana's heart sank, fearing bad news. But when they were alone, he pulled a small box from his pocket. "I know we talked about waiting," he said, "but I cannot wait anymore. Julianna Baker, will you marry me?" The ring was simple, just a thin gold band, but to Juliana, it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I will marry you." They married a month later in a simple ceremony at the trading post. Martha stood as witness, along with Samuel's boss from the ranch where he used to work. There was no big celebration, no fancy dress. Juliana wore her best calico dress, and Samuel wore a clean shirt and his Sunday jacket. But when they exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other, Juliana felt like she was making a sacred promise that went beyond words. "I love both halves of you," Samuel whispered as they kissed. "The Apache and the white, both make you who you are, and I love all of it." Those words meant more to Juliana than anything else he could have said. All her life, people had wanted her to choose, to be one or the other. But Samuel saw her as complete, not broken into parts. They spent their wedding night at Samuel's ranch, which was now their ranch. The house was small but well built, with 2 rooms and a loft. Samuel had filled it with simple furniture he had made himself. A table and chairs, a bed frame, a rocking chair by the fireplace. "It is not much," he said as he carried her over the threshold. "It is perfect," she said, and she meant it. Juliana continued working at the trading post for a few months, saving money for the ranch. But as their first winter together approached, She told Martha she needed to stop. There was too much work to do at home, and she wanted to focus on building their life together. Martha understood. "You have been the best help I have ever had, but I knew from the start you were meant for something more than serving food to strangers. You take care of that husband of yours." "I will. Thank you for everything, Martha. You saved my life." "No, girl, you saved your own life. I just gave you a place to do it." Life on the ranch was hard work but satisfying. Julianna learned to tend the chickens, milk the cows Samuel bought, and help with the cattle. She kept a garden, growing vegetables and herbs. Samuel built her a summer ramada in the Apache style, where she could work during the hottest part of the day. He asked her to teach him about Apache traditions, wanting to understand that part of her heritage. In turn, she learned cowboy skills from him: how to rope a calf, how to read the signs of sick cattle, how to judge the best grazing areas. They worked side by side, building something together. Their first real test came during a hard winter. Snow was rare in the Arizona territory, but that year, it fell heavy and stayed long. 3 of their cattle died despite their best efforts. Money got tight. There were nights when they went to bed hungry so they could save food for the animals, but they got through it together. Samuel never blamed Julianna or suggested that life would be easier without her, and Julianna never considered leaving, even when things got hard. They had made vows and they meant them. Spring brought relief and new life. 2 of their cows gave birth to healthy calves. The garden flourished. Samuel sold some cattle at a good price, and they were able to buy more supplies and even start saving again. In the summer, Julianna realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She thought of her mother, who had died too young, and wondered if she would be a good mother herself. Samuel was overjoyed. He built a cradle and insisted Julianna rest more, though she insisted she was perfectly capable of working. They argued about it good-naturedly, compromising on a reduced workload. That autumn, Martha came to visit with news. "I am selling the trading post," she announced. "I am getting too old for this work, and my sister back east has been begging me to come live with her." "We will miss you," Julianna said, her hand resting on her swollen belly. "I will miss you too, but I am glad you found your place." Martha looked around the ranch with approval. "You and Sam have built something good here." After Martha left, Samuel said, "I have been thinking about expanding. We could add more cattle, maybe even buy the land next to ours. But I wanted to ask you first. This is your home too, and big decisions should be made together." It still surprised Julianna sometimes, the way Samuel valued her opinion. "I think we should wait until after the baby comes. Then we can decide." Their son was born on a cold January morning in 1875. The birth was long and difficult, but when Julianna finally held her baby, she felt a fierce love unlike anything she had ever experienced. Samuel cried when he held his son for the first time, overcome with emotion. "What should we name him?" Julianna asked. They had discussed names but never settled on one. Samuel looked down at his son's tiny face. "What about Joseph?" "After my father, Joseph Porter," Julianna said, testing the name. "It is good, but he should have an Apache name too." "My mother's people believe a child needs a name from both worlds if they are to walk in balance." "What name would your mother have chosen?" Julianna thought. "Kai. It means willow tree, strong and flexible, able to bend in the wind without breaking." "Joseph Kai Porter," Samuel smiled. "Perfect." The next few years were full of joy and challenges. Joseph grew from a tiny infant into a sturdy toddler with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. They expanded the ranch gradually, buying more cattle and another parcel of land. Money was never plentiful, but they always had enough. When Joseph was 3, Julianna gave birth to a daughter. They named her Mary after Samuel's mother, with the Apache name Istas, which meant snow, because she was born during a rare snowstorm. The children grew up learning both their father's ways and their mother's heritage. Samuel insisted they know their Apache roots. He invited some of the peaceful Apache families in the area to visit, wanting his children to know that side of their family. It was not always easy. Some of the Apache were suspicious of Samuel, and some of his white neighbors disapproved of the association. But Samuel and Julianna stood firm. "Our children will know where they come from," Samuel said to one neighbor who complained. "All of where they come from. If you have a problem with that, you can stay off our land." When Joseph was 5 and Mary was 2, an older Apache woman came to the ranch. She was thin and weathered, her face lined with years of hard living, but her eyes were sharp and familiar. "I am Pale Moon," she said in Apache. "Your mother's sister." Juliana's heart nearly stopped. "My mother had a sister, a younger sister. I was only a child when she was cast out for being with a white man. I am old now and I have been thinking about family, about mistakes made. The elders who decided to leave you behind are dead now. I wanted to find you to tell you that some of us disagreed with that choice." Tears streamed down Juliana's face. "Why did you not speak up then?" "I was afraid. The tribe was in chaos, always moving, always hunted. Keeping you felt dangerous, and I was a coward." Pale Moon's voice cracked. "I have regretted it every day since. I do not expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that you were not forgotten by everyone." Julianna looked at this woman, her mother's sister, her aunt. She could see the resemblance now, in the shape of her face and the set of her shoulders. Part of her wanted to send Pale Moon away, to reject her as she had been rejected. But she thought of Joseph and Mary, and how lucky they were to grow up with parents who loved them, and she could not do it. "Come inside," she said in Apache. "Meet your great-niece and nephew." Samuel was wary at first, but he welcomed Pale Moon because Julianna asked him to. Over the next few days, Pale Moon told stories about Julianna's mother, about her childhood, about the grandmother Julianna had never met. She taught the children songs and games, and slowly Julianna felt some of the old wounds begin to heal. When Pale Moon prepared to leave, she said, "You have built a good life here. Your mother would be proud." "Thank you for coming," Julianna said. "Will you come back, if you will have me? You are family. You are always welcome." Pale Moon visited twice a year after that, bringing news from various Apache bands, teaching the children more about their heritage. It was a small connection, but it meant the world to Julianna. The years rolled on. The ranch prospered. Samuel proved to be an excellent rancher, with a good eye for cattle and a reputation for honest dealing. Juliana's cooking skills became well known in the area, and she sometimes sold her preserves and baked goods to passing travelers. When Joseph was 8, a new family moved onto land about 5 miles away. They had a daughter Joseph's age, and the two became fast friends. Samuel and Julianna were invited to dinner, and a friendship formed between the families. It was the first time Julianna felt truly accepted by white neighbors, not just tolerated. Mary grew into a bright, curious child who asked endless questions about everything. She loved animals and had a gentle way with them. By the time she was 5, she could calm the most nervous horse with a few soft words. In 1882, when Joseph was 7 and Mary was 4, Julianna gave birth to twin boys. They named them Daniel and David, with the Apache names Takoda and Tahoe, meaning friend to all and great water. The babies kept them busy, but they managed with Joseph and Mary helping with age-appropriate tasks. The ranch continued to grow. They hired 2 cowboys to help with the work, young men who treated Julianna with respect and played with the children during breaks. The house was expanded to include more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Life was full and good. On their 10th anniversary, Samuel surprised Juliana with a trip to Apache, Nevada, the mining town they had once spoken of. They left the children with the cowboys and made the several-day journey north. The town was rough and bustling, full of miners seeking their fortunes. They stayed in a real hotel, ate meals they did not have to cook, and walked the streets hand in hand. "I would not want to live here," Samuel said, watching the chaos of the main street. "Too many people, me either. I prefer our quiet corner of the world." Juliana squeezed his hand. "Thank you for this, though. It is nice to have an adventure." That night, lying in the hotel bed, Samuel said, "Do you remember the day we met? You were standing under that tree, looking so determined and so lost at the same time." "I remember thinking you might rob me or worse," he laughed. "And I was thinking I had never seen anyone so beautiful and so fierce in my entire life. I knew right then that you were going to change my life. Did you know you were going to fall in love with me? Maybe not in that exact moment, but close enough." He pulled her close. "These have been the best 10 years of my life, Juliana. I cannot imagine my life without you." "You will never have to," she promised. They returned home to find the children had behaved reasonably well, and the cowboys had managed to keep everything running smoothly. Life returned to its normal rhythm of work and family, and the quiet satisfactions of a life well lived. As the children grew older, questions arose about schooling. There was no school near the ranch, and the nearest one was a 2-hour ride away. Samuel and Juliana taught them at home, using the books Samuel had saved from his own childhood, and some that Juliana ordered from a catalog. Joseph showed a talent for working with leather, making bridles and saddles with increasing skill. Mary had her mother's way with cooking and her father's ease with animals. The twins were still young but showing their own distinct personalities. Daniel was quiet and thoughtful, always watching and learning. David was boisterous and energetic, constantly getting into harmless trouble. In 1885, when Joseph was 10, he asked about Juliana's Apache heritage in a new way. "Ma, do you ever wish you had stayed with your mother's people?" Juliana considered the question carefully. "Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like, but I do not wish for it. If I had stayed, I never would have met your father. I never would have had you and your brothers and sister. This is where I am meant to be." "But do you ever feel like you are missing part of who you are?" She realized her son was asking a deeper question, one about his own identity. "Joseph, you are Apache and white just like me. You do not have to choose between them. You can honor both parts of who you are. Your father and I have tried to teach you that. Some of the other kids, when we go to town, they say mean things. About you being Apache, about us being half-breeds." Juliana's heart ached. She had hoped her children would not face the same prejudice she had, but she had known it was probably too much to hope for. "What do you say when they say these things?" "I tell them my ma is the smartest, strongest person I know, and I am proud to be her son. Then I usually punch them if they keep talking." Despite herself, Juliana laughed. "While I appreciate the sentiment, maybe try walking away instead of punching." Pa said the same thing. Joseph grinned. "But sometimes people do not learn unless you stand up for yourself. Your father is a wise man. Listen to him." That evening she told Samuel about the conversation. He sighed. "I was afraid of this. I hoped things might be different for our children, but people do not change as fast as we would like. What do? We keep doing what we are doing. We teach them to be proud of who they are. We teach them that other people's ignorance is not their problem, and we love them enough that they know their worth does not depend on anyone else's opinion." It was good advice, and they followed it. The children grew up confident in their identity, secure in their parents' love. They faced prejudice from time to time, but they also found friends who judged them by their character rather than their blood. The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life. Calving season in spring, branding in summer, roundup in fall, quiet winters spent on maintenance and indoor work. The children grew tall and capable. The ranch prospered enough that they could afford small luxuries like store-bought cloth for new dresses and real glass windows for the house. Pale Moon continued her visits, growing older and more frail with each year. When she finally passed away peacefully in her sleep during a visit in 1888, they buried her on a hill overlooking the ranch, with proper Apache ceremonies that she had taught them. The children, now teenagers and youngsters, sang the songs she had taught them, and Julianna felt a bittersweet satisfaction that her aunt had found peace in the end. In 1890, Joseph turned 15 and started talking about his future. He wanted to stay on the ranch, to eventually take it over when Samuel was ready to retire. Samuel was pleased but cautioned him not to make hasty decisions. "You should see something of the world first," he said. "I started working young because I had to, but you have choices. Think about what you really want." But Joseph was adamant. "I have thought about it, Pa. This is what I want. The land, the work, the life. It is in my blood." Samuel looked at Julianna, who nodded. "Then we will start teaching you the business side of ranching. It is not enough to know how to work cattle. You need to know how to manage money, negotiate sales, deal with buyers." Mary, now 13, announced she wanted to study medicine. "There is a women's medical college back east," she said. "I have been reading about it. I want to help people, and animals too if I can." It was an ambitious dream and an expensive one, but Samuel and Julianna had always encouraged their children to dream big. "We will find a way," Samuel promised. They started saving more aggressively, setting aside money specifically for Mary's education. She threw herself into studying with renewed vigor, reading every medical text they could get their hands on. The twins, now 8, were inseparable. They worked together, played together, and frequently got into trouble together. But they were good-hearted boys, always willing to help with chores and kind to animals and younger children. As the 19th century drew to a close, the world was changing. Railroads were spreading across the West, bringing more people and new ways of life. The wild, open range was being fenced and claimed. The Apache wars were over, the surviving tribes forced onto reservations. It was a time of transition, and not all of it was good. But on the ranch, life continued much as it always had. Work from dawn to dusk, meals around the family table, evenings spent reading or talking or singing. It was a simple life but a rich one, full of love and purpose. On their 20th anniversary in 1895, Samuel and Julianna took another trip, this time to Santa Fe. They left the ranch in Joseph's capable hands, now a young man of 20 who knew the operation as well as his father did. The twins, now 13, were old enough to be genuinely helpful rather than just getting in the way. In Santa Fe, Samuel bought Julianna a silver bracelet inlaid with turquoise, worked by a Navajo craftsman. It was the most expensive thing he had ever bought her, and she treasured it. 20 years, he said as they watched the sunset from their hotel window. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I found you under that tree. Other times it feels like you have been with me forever. I cannot imagine my life without you," Julianna said. "You took someone who had been abandoned and made her whole. You loved me when I could not love myself. You gave me a family and a home and a purpose. Julianna, you give me too much credit. You were always whole. I just saw what others were too blind to see." He turned her to face him. "You made me whole too. Before I met you, I was just going through the motions of living. You taught me what it meant to really love someone, to build a life with someone. Everything good in my life came from you." They held each other as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. 20 years of marriage, and the love between them burned as bright as ever. They returned home to find Joseph had handled everything perfectly. Mary had received an acceptance letter from the medical college. The twins had only broken one window with an errant baseball. All things considered, it was a successful trip. The next year, Mary left for medical school back east. It was the first time one of their children had left home, and the house felt emptier without her bright energy. But she wrote letters faithfully, telling them about her studies and the exciting new world she was discovering. Joseph courted and married a local girl named Emma in 1897. She was the daughter of their neighbors, the ones who had moved in years before. The wedding was a joyous occasion, and Emma proved to be a wonderful addition to the family. She had a quick wit and a kind heart, and she took to ranch life easily. Within a year, Emma was pregnant. The announcement filled Julianna with joy. She was going to be a grandmother. It felt impossible, as if no time had passed since she was a young woman herself, alone and abandoned. But time had passed. She was now 44 years old, with silver threads in her dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes. Samuel was 49, his hair more gray than brown, his face weathered by years of outdoor work. But when he looked at her, she still saw the young man who had offered her a ride on his horse all those years ago. Their first grandchild, a boy named Samuel Joseph, was born in the spring of 1898. Holding the tiny bundle, Julianna was overwhelmed with emotion. Her mother had never gotten to meet her grandchildren, but Julianna was here, able to hold this precious new life, to see the continuation of the family she and Samuel had built. "He looks like you," Samuel said, peering over her shoulder at the baby. "He looks like Joseph, who looks like you." Samuel kissed the top of her head. "Our family continues." Mary came home for a visit that summer, now a confident young woman in her second year of medical school. She examined baby Samuel with professional interest, pronouncing him healthy and well-formed. She told them stories about her studies, about the other women in her classes, about the fascinating world of medicine. "I want to come back west when I finish," she said. "There are not enough doctors out here and the people need help. Maybe I could set up a practice in one of the towns nearby." "We would love to have you closer," Julianna said. "But you do not have to decide now. Follow where life leads you." The twins, now 16, were starting to think about their own futures. Daniel wanted to try his hand at blacksmithing, an essential skill in the area. David was considering becoming a lawman, inspired by stories of frontier justice. "I want to help people," David explained. "Make things safer and fairer." "It is dangerous work," Samuel cautioned. "But if that is what you feel called to do, your mother and I will support you." As the new century approached, there was a sense of change in the air. The old ways were fading. The open range was gone, replaced by fenced ranches. Towns were growing into cities. Technology was advancing in ways that seemed almost magical, but some things remained constant. Love, family, hard work, integrity. These were the values Samuel and Julianna had built their life on, and they passed them to their children and now their grandchildren. On New Year's Eve of 1899, the whole family gathered at the ranch to celebrate the turn of the century. Joseph and Emma with little Samuel, now 18 months old and toddling everywhere. Mary, home for the holidays. Daniel and David, now young men of 17. They stayed up until midnight, watching the stars and talking about what the new century might bring. "No matter what changes come," Samuel said, holding Julianna's hand, "we will face them together. That is what family does." The early years of the new century brought more changes. Emma gave birth to twins in 1901, girls they named Sarah and Rebecca. Mary graduated from medical school in 1902 and returned to the Arizona Territory, setting up a practice in a town about a day's ride from the ranch. She became known as an excellent doctor, willing to treat anyone regardless of their ability to pay. Daniel apprenticed with a blacksmith in town and showed real talent for the work. David joined the territorial marshals, working to keep the peace in a region that still had its share of outlaws and trouble. Samuel and Julianna gradually stepped back from the day-to-day running of the ranch, letting Joseph take over more responsibilities. They spent their time with the grandchildren, maintaining the house and garden and enjoying the fruits of their decades of labor. In 1905, Julianna's 50th birthday arrived. The family threw a surprise party, with all the children and grandchildren gathering at the ranch. As Julianna looked around at the faces of her family, 3 generations united, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. That evening, after everyone else had gone to bed, she and Samuel sat on the porch watching the stars. "You remember when we met?" Samuel asked. "You were all alone in the world. I remember. I thought I would always be alone. And now look at you. Surrounded by people who love you, who would not exist without you." He took her hand. "You are the heart of this family, Julianna. You took your pain and your past and you built something beautiful." "We built it together," she corrected. "I could not have done any of this without you. You loved me when I did not fit anywhere. You saw me as whole when the world saw me as broken. You gave me a place to belong. You always belonged, Julianna. The world just took a while to catch up." They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching the night sky. 50 years old, and Julianna finally felt at peace with who she was. Apache and white, mother and grandmother, wife and partner. All the pieces that others had tried to separate, Samuel had helped her unite. The years continued their steady march. More grandchildren arrived, a house full of noise and energy. Joseph and Emma's children grew, showing aptitude for ranching like their father. Mary married another doctor in 1907, a kind man who shared her passion for healing. They set up a joint practice and were soon welcoming their own children. Daniel married the blacksmith's daughter and took over the smithy when his mentor retired. David distinguished himself as a marshal and was promoted to a larger territory. He married a schoolteacher and settled in a growing town called Phoenix. By 1910, Samuel and Julianna had 10 grandchildren, with more on the way. The ranch was thriving under Joseph's management. The family they had created spread across the territory, all of them carrying forward the values they had been taught. Samuel turned 60 in 1911. His hair was completely gray now, his hands gnarled with arthritis. But his mind was sharp, and his love for Julianna burned as bright as ever. They celebrated quietly, just the two of them, with a special dinner she cooked using recipes from both her heritages. "I have been thinking," Samuel said over dessert, "we should write down our story, for the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, so they know where they came from." "I am not much of a writer," Julianna protested. "Then we will tell it and Mary can write it down. She has always been good with words." He reached across the table and took her hand. "It is an important story, Julianna, about how love can heal wounds, how family can be built from nothing, how 2 people from different worlds can create something beautiful together." So they began the project, spending evenings recounting their history while Mary carefully transcribed everything. The day they met, their courtship, the early struggles, the building of the ranch, the births of each child, the prejudice they had faced and overcome, the love that had sustained them through every challenge. It took months to complete, but when it was finished, they had a record of their life together. Mary had several copies made, one for each of their children. "This is our legacy," Samuel said when they presented the first copy to Joseph. "Not just the ranch or the money we leave behind, but the story of what love can build." In 1913, they celebrated their 38th anniversary. Samuel was 62, Julianna was 58. The party was large, with children and grandchildren filling every corner of the house. As Julianna looked around, she marveled at how far she had come from that lonely young woman standing in the desert. That night, after everyone had left, Samuel said he was feeling tired. He went to bed early, which was unusual for him. Julianna joined him, and they lay in the darkness, holding hands. "I am so glad I found you that day," Samuel whispered. "You have been the greatest blessing of my life." "And you have been mine," Julianna replied. They fell asleep that way, hands clasped, hearts united. Samuel did not wake the next morning. He died peacefully in his sleep, his heart simply stopping after 62 years of beating strong and true. Julianna's grief was profound but not bitter. They had been blessed with 38 years together, a rare gift in a hard world. He had loved her completely, seen her fully, and helped her become whole. The loss left a hole in her heart, but it did not break her. They buried Samuel on the hill next to Pale Moon, overlooking the ranch he had built. All their children and grandchildren attended, along with neighbors and friends whose lives Samuel had touched. Mary gave a eulogy, speaking of her father's kindness, his integrity, his unwavering love for his family. "He taught us that love is not about where someone comes from," Mary said. "It is about who they are. He saw the best in people and brought out the best in them. The world is poorer without him, but richer for having had him at all." After the funeral, Julianna stood at the grave for a long time, her hand on the wooden marker they had placed there until a proper stone could be carved. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me, for loving me, for building this life with me. I will miss you every day, but I will not waste the time you gave me. I will live fully, love fiercely, and honor your memory by continuing what we built together." The next few years were difficult but manageable. Julianna threw herself into helping with the grandchildren, teaching them the stories and skills her mother had taught her. She wanted them to know their Apache heritage, to understand that it was something to be proud of, not hidden. She also spent time writing, adding to the family history. She included stories Samuel had told her about his childhood, things she remembered about her mother, lessons they had learned together. It became a comprehensive record, not just of events, but of the philosophy that had guided their lives. In 1917, the United States entered the Great War. David, now working as a federal marshal, coordinated security efforts. Daniel made equipment for the war effort. Mary treated soldiers returning wounded. Even Joseph contributed, providing beef for military camps. The family worried but stayed strong, united by the bonds Samuel and Julianna had forged. They wrote letters to each other frequently, checking in, offering support, sharing news. The war ended in 1918, and the family emerged intact, though worn by the strain. That Christmas, they all gathered at the ranch again. Julianna, now 63, sat in the rocking chair Samuel had made all those years ago, surrounded by her children, grandchildren, and a growing number of great-grandchildren. "Your grandfather would be so proud of all of you," she said. "You have grown into good people, strong and kind. You have built lives of integrity. You have passed his lessons on to your own children." "We had good teachers," Joseph said, smiling at his mother. "You and Pa showed us how to live." As the 1920s began, Julianna noticed she was slowing down. Her joints ached more. She tired more easily, but her mind remained sharp and her heart remained full. She spent her days tending a smaller garden, mending clothes, playing with great-grandchildren, and enjoying the life she had built. In the spring of 1920, on a warm April day, Juliana sat on the porch watching the sunset. The sky was ablaze with color, reminding her of that long-ago evening in Santa Fe. She thought about Samuel, about her mother, about all the people who had shaped her life. Mary came out to join her. "How are you feeling, Ma?" "Content," Juliana said honestly. "I've had a good life, Mary, better than I ever imagined possible when I was young." "You built something amazing," Mary said. "You and Pa, this family, this ranch, this legacy of love. We are all here because you chose each other, chose to love across the boundaries others tried to draw. Your father did the hard part. He saw past what everyone else saw. He loved me when I could not love myself. And you loved him back. You made a home for him, gave him children, built a life together. It was not one-sided, Ma. You made each other whole." Juliana smiled. "I suppose we did." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge. Juliana felt a deep peace settling over her. She had been abandoned as a young woman, cast out by the people who should have claimed her. But Samuel had found her in the desert, had seen her worth, had loved every part of her. Together, they had built something that would last for generations. She was no longer the lonely girl standing between two worlds. She was Juliana Porter, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother. She was Apache and white, fully both, no longer torn between halves. Samuel had loved both sides of her and in doing so had helped her become whole. As the years passed, Juliana lived to see her family continue to grow and thrive. The ranch passed to Joseph and his children, who managed it with the same care and integrity Samuel had instilled. Mary's medical practice expanded, serving communities across the territory. Daniel's blacksmith shop became known for the finest work in the region. David rose to become a U.S. Marshal of significant influence, known for his fairness and wisdom. Juliana passed away peacefully in 1925 at the age of 70, surrounded by 3 generations of the family she and Samuel had created. She was buried next to Samuel on the hill, the graves marked with a single stone that read, "Samuel and Juliana Porter." They found each other in the wilderness and built a home. Their love made them whole. The ranch continued for generations, always passed down through the family. The story of Samuel and Juliana became a family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The written history Mary had transcribed was carefully preserved, a testament to the power of love to transcend boundaries and heal wounds. Their descendants spread across the country, but they always remembered where they came from. They carried forward the lessons Samuel and Juliana had taught. That love is stronger than prejudice, that family is built through dedication and sacrifice, that everyone deserves to be seen as whole. The Arizona Territory, where they had struggled and thrived, became the state of Arizona in 1912, growing and changing with each passing year. The old ways faded, but the values Samuel and Juliana had lived by remained timeless. In the end, their story was simple but profound. 2 people from different worlds, both carrying wounds, had found each other in the vast desert. They had chosen love over prejudice, unity over division. They had built a family, a home, a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. Samuel had loved Juliana when she had been abandoned, when she felt broken and incomplete. He had seen her not as half of 2 things, but as fully herself. And in loving him back, in building a life together, Juliana had finally found the place she belonged. They had made each other whole, and in doing so had created something beautiful that would last for generations. Their love story became a beacon, showing that it was possible to bridge divides, to build unity from division, to create family from loneliness. The ranch still stood decades later, modernized but still recognizable, still owned by descendants who knew the story of the cowboy who had found an abandoned Apache girl in the desert and loved every part of her. They told the story to their children, who told it to theirs, keeping alive the memory of a love that had defied expectations and created something lasting. And on clear nights, when the stars blazed overhead just as they had a century before, it was easy to imagine Samuel and Juliana sitting on that old porch, hands clasped, watching the sunset together. Two souls who had found each other against all odds, who had built something beautiful from nothing, who had proven that love could heal any wound and bridge any divide. Their story ended not in tragedy or sorrow, but in triumph. They had lived long lives, raised good children, and left behind a legacy of love that would never fade. They had found each other in the wilderness, and together they had built a home that would stand forever.